Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here and welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to continue with our PSP InfiniStrip video selection. And in this one, we're going to look at the filter modules. So firstly, if you are new to my channel or new to my videos and you like what you see, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So the filter modules in PSP InfiniStrip. So as I explained before, we've done an overview of the entire plugin in a previous video, and we've covered off the preamp modules. Now we're going to have a look at the filter modules. This one's a little bit simpler, obviously, because it is just about filters. So definitely a worthwhile addition to the channel strip. So let's just get into it and check them out. All right, so we're in Cubase again, and we are continuing with our PSP InfiniStrip videos. And this time we are probably doing a quick one here, maybe. We'll see how we go. We are looking at the filter module. All right, so the filters module, we have three types of filters. We have the basic filter, the pro filter, and the SC filter, which I'm guessing is sidechain filter. So let's do a basic description, as we normally do from the manual, and we'll start with the basic filters here. The basic filter is a simple high pass and low pass filter with selectable slope. Suggested applications used to constrain a signal's bandwidth to a usable range. Start by adding this at the beginning of the signal path directly after the preamp and before the gate or compressor. This way you can remove unusable low-end frequencies to facilitate further processing down the chain. Yes, pretty common. Normally, in a lot of channel strips, this section here is actually just a part of the EQ module. But obviously for a space factor here, being a 500 series, they have separated it out into its own module here. So I guess if you were trying to emulate an SSL or something like that, this would be the little filter section in that SSL module that goes with the compressors, the gates, and the channel EQ, the EQ, etc. So as I said, some EQs will have the filters in there, but for a space point of view, they have put them separately. So still a very useful module. It's probably a pretty boring module, but definitely useful. Now, more than likely, we generally use the high pass filter more than we'll use the low pass filter, but there's a time that I will do a low pass if need be. All right, so the pro filters, it adds a parametric filter to the basic filters. All right, so you've got your high pass, low pass, but they add this one in the middle with all these fancy little pitches and stuff like that. So the suggested applications for this one is to use the extra mid filter to remove a few kilohertz whistling frequency of a distorted guitar, or to remove a low or low mid timpani rumble by using a notch or a peak filter. So I guess the point of this is this saves you wasting, I guess, an EQ band in trying to do some corrective EQ where you're trying to notch out an annoying frequency or something like that. You can do that within this filter module, which will then free up all the bands in an EQ to do sweetening and enhancing as opposed to corrective things. Yeah, so it's quite common in mixing to get into an audio source and start to look for an annoying frequency to filter it out or notch it out with an EQ, and they've just given you that ability to do it here in this filter module, which is pretty good. I like that. Now, I'm assuming that it's exactly the same as the basic, just with the added control there. So if that was the case, I would probably pull this one up all the time and not bother to use the basic filters. I would probably use this one here. Okay, and the SC filter filters that affect the sidechain signal rather than the source audio signal, used to emphasize frequencies used to control subsequent modules in the chain, such as expander or compressor. So example, if you're experiencing issues with rumbling from an acoustic guitar, find the rumbling frequency of the instrument, exaggerate it with a peak filter, and use this frequency range to control the compressor with its external sidechain button on. So if we go back to our basic here, it's pretty simple. I said this is probably going to be quick. We can turn on or off the different modules. So we've got a low pass filter, or also known as a high cut, or a high pass filter, also known as a low cut. We have a switch here to determine the slope of the filter. So we've got a 6, the middle is 12, and top is 18. Okay, so it's not an extremely sharp filter. So, some people use 24-48 dB slope. So this is more of your analog style filter, I guess, with a very gentle slope there of 6, up to 18. 18 is still a good value. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not a bad, it's still a pretty sharp filter slope there, but it doesn't go to the extremes that some other modules do. And then we have that same setting. Well, actually, okay, it's different. So the top is 6, 12, and 18. The bottom one is 12, 18, and 24. Okay, so this one does go sharper. So they go sharper on the high pass and less on the low pass, which probably makes sense because that's going to give you a more natural filter sound than doing really sharp cuts on the top end. But you can do sharper cuts on your low end, I guess. And then you have your knob control here, which basically sets the frequency that you're going to start that filter, the slope at, or set it at the -3 dB point, I think it is. That's usually how it works. So on the low, you've got 20 hertz all the way up to 2 kilohertz. So you can make it sound very thin. And on the top, you've got 30K all the way down to 300 hertz. So you could pretty much wipe out an entire signal if you cross the two together. Now, if we go down to our Pro, our low pass and our high pass are identical. As far as I can tell, yes, they are. They definitely are. 2K, 30K. Yep, they are identical. So what we are interested in here is this middle part, which has a button that looks like it's saying flat, but it's not flat, it's filter. So it engages or disengages the parametric filter. We have a frequency knob, so we're determining what frequency we want to tackle with this filter. We have a Q control, which sets the Q of the filter, or I guess in layman's terms, the bandwidth, how wide the filter is. All right, so the narrower the Q, the sharper, I guess, or narrower the bandwidth, or you can make it nice and wide bandwidth if you so choose. And then we have a gain knob. So it's like, how much are we cutting out of it if we're cutting, or how much are we boosting if we're going to boost the frequency range? And then we have all of these different shapes. And the shapes are basically as they are sort of shown here. You can have a low shelf. So we can even add a shelf to this, which is very interesting. So we're doing part of our EQ in this filter here. So we can do a shelf, a low shelf. We could do a high shelf. Yeah, I guess they're calling that a bell. They're calling that one a peak. Oh, interesting. Okay, so when you go the bell, the gain control is wiped out. Not sure why, but anyway. Yeah, you've got a peak here, which is obviously a bit narrower. And then you got a notch again where the gain control is taken out. So I'm just looking in the module. It doesn't say what it actually does, but I can only assume that the notch automatically cuts, and it must cut by a value. So it's just not giving you anything. It must be a set sort of value, and the bell must be a set value of a boost. So again, they take away this knob. And the peak obviously gives you the maximum control there. And then if you go to the side chain, there is, nothing else to that. It's exactly the same settings. Right, so let's just go up to our basic filter here. We've just got guitar. Let me just, so if we just mute that. Okay, we bring it in. Well, we can turn those off as well. Right, you can see what that's doing. If I go to 6, it's more subtle. 12, 18, more extreme. Right, so that's basically how the slopes work. So if you wanted to sound like this was going through a bit of tape or something like that, you might want to knock off a bit of the top. Or if it's a little bit too much sizzle on the top. As before. So if you've got an amp or using a digital based amp or something like that, sometimes a lot of those will have this unnatural sounding hiss or just unwelcome hiss, especially with some of the distortions. These can be very useful for taking that horrible sound off. Can make the guitars sound a little bit more realistic, a bit more in what you'd actually want to get out of it. Now, obviously, there's the low. So, if you've got a bit of too much low end rumble on something, well, you can go all the way up there. Or you can just go to something a bit more reasonable here. Guitar's getting in the way of your bass. Maybe not that much. Again, more extreme on different levels. And of course, if you want to go for a telephone effect, you can add the two together. So pretty easy. And there's no difference between the other two. We will have to look at this sidechain one. I'll have to work out how that functions, but we'll assume that it doesn't sound any different. It just has a different purpose. So this is going to sound exactly the same, these two. So let's just have a look at this middle one. I'll turn these two off. So assume in peak mode, let's go to shelf first, right? So we've got a low shelf. Change the Q of your shelf. So if you wanted to boost some low end, or maybe you want to cut some low end, but you don't want to filter it 100%, you just want to shelf it. Or the other end of the scale. So you'll see, I was going to say the frequencies change, but they don't change. So when you change from a shelf to a high shelf, you have to change your frequency quickly, otherwise you're going to... Actually, it's the other way around. Okay, so how about what about this one here? Let's have a look at the bell. Okay, so that does nothing there. Okay, so you could really go for that telephone effect by doing this. So basically it is just, it seems to be filtering out everything around it entirely. Depending on the cue, depends on how tight it is. So a very wide cue is just taking a little bit off the top and the bottom. Depending where you set it, of course. But you can get thinner and thinner to be just around that frequency. Alright, so if we go for a parametric, this should just work like our EQ. And then if we do a notch, again, this control obviously goes nowhere. So we are just naturally cutting here. So that's with a really wide cue by the look of it. So it's actually the opposite way around to what I thought originally. So this is a wide cue because it's cutting out the most signal. It's cutting out the least. So again, one process could be to, if you go to this one here, let's say you get your cue. Find the frequency you're not happy with. Let's just say you're not happy with that sound. Now I've got that locked in, I could cut to notch. Or if you wanted a bit of extra control, you could go to your parametric and cut just the amount that you want. Instead of like as much as the notch does. Seems to be a bit less than that. That's pretty close. So it might be doing a 12 dB cut by looking at this value that I've got set here. They sound pretty close. So if you didn't want to cut that much, you could go over to the parametric instead of the notch and cut a little bit less. Right, so that's how you can use that. So, you know, that's pretty useful. Like I said, if you just want to get rid of an annoying frequency and you don't want to waste an entire part, you know, a band on your EQ, then you can pull out this and use it. All right, let's work out the sidechain one. So you can hear here, turning it on doesn't do anything, but if we do monitor, we can hear what we're actually doing. But it's not working as an actual filter. It is literally a sidechain filter. All right, so let's have a look here. Let's see. So let's just say I turn this off. Let's put this in monitor mode. Let's say we find that annoying. So we are exaggerating it now. We turn that monitor off. Now, what this is saying is that we want a sidechain. All right, so it's sort of a unique approach here, but what they're doing is, their example is if you had an acoustic guitar with lots of rumbling, you'd find the rumbling frequency, you exaggerate it with, say, this peak filter, and then you use the sidechain button here, the external sidechain on the compressor, and it will listen to this. And it will compress based on that. So every time the rumble comes in, it would start compressing, right? And you could use expanders or whatever else. So even if I have this side chain on here, if I have this compressor going, you can see what it's doing. Now if I unmute, you can see it changes what it's doing here. Now, this is what it's listening to, as opposed to, that's the normal sound. And I'll boost to this 650. Now, you can see if I click this monitor, you can hear again what it's listening to. If I hit that. So let's see if we can get a better example here, because that's not really... Let's let's say it's this rumble here. Okay, let's say I want it to respond to that. So in this case here, let's say I'll compress quite heavily. And we'll compress, we'll respond fast. Will it go fairly fast? Okay. Now, if I take the sidechain off, I'm just going to set this to a point where it really doesn't do much at all. Right, so you see it's not compressing much, if at all. Moves the meter occasionally, but not much. Now, because I've boosted this, I'm going to get it to respond to this low end frequency a lot more. So now what we do, if we put the sidechain on, let's drop it a little bit more. So every time that sort of low end thump comes in, maybe we could go lower. We could do a peak. So let's say we want it to not really compress our guitar at all, but we want it to react when that thump comes in, when that thump on a palm mute. And we want it to pull down in those moments. That's what they've done this for. So we set up this to boost that frequency, and then we get this to listen and respond to that boosted frequency. So you can see it responding there. Now if I turn the sidechain off, you see it's not compressing at all there. So every time those palm mutes hit there, it really pulls back. So that's sort of the purpose of it. Now, I'm not sure if I've got the greatest example here because it's probably not something I would use that often. It's really in a very unique case that I would probably use this sidechain filter. There's obviously a purpose for it, and it's one of those filters that you'll use very rarely, but when you do, it'll be for a specific reason and you'll be grateful you have it. But it's probably not something I'm going to be going to very often. More than likely, I might pull this one out, or I'll just use the basic filters just to do my filtering. I like doing filtering a lot, especially the old high-pass filter. I'll do that on quite a lot of tracks. So if I was doing all of my mixing in this plugin, InfiniStrip, then I would definitely be using this filter module. And considering that you've got one slot allocated anyway to a filter, you may as well put one on. But yeah, feel free to put this one on if you want a little bit of extra control to filter out some an annoying frequency. So there you go. There is the filter modules in the PSP InfiniStrip plugin. Let me know what you think of them in the comments. Obviously, it's a pretty simple sort of module there, but definitely a useful one when it comes to mixing. So let me know your thoughts on it. If you do have any questions about the filter modules or anything about the plugin, please feel free to put them in the comments below. If you like what you see here, then please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully this video has been helpful. I thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.